Hello, I'm Altilt. I am one of the two developers that's currently working on,
Pokémon Close Combat!
and I will be here to make a guide for anyone that's interested in this game, but maybe has never played a fighting game before. So first we're going to get into the menu here, and to start for this game, while you can hook up a controller, the default controls are set up on keyboard, and so the default controls for the main controls are WASD for stick movement, essentially, and J, K, and L as your actual buttons. So we will navigate into solo mode here and pick Blaziken. And for new players, you can play the path, which will let you play against AI, play event mode, which currently has Toga Ball, a mini game, or the mode we will be looking at here, training mode, where we can practice our moves. Training mode will put you up against Wobbuffet, who has a litany of options available to help you test out your character. The general principle of fighting games for most 2D fighters is that you move around a fixed panning arena where you hold forward to move forward, back to move back. You have the ability to crouch, and you have the ability to jump in any direction with fixed Castlevania jumps that you generally cannot change the arc of once you start. The attacking buttons in this game, on J is attack, on K is special, and then on L we have a parry. We can also use a parry and towards the opponent, hold towards the opponent to throw, or hold away to throw backward. These are generally the basic buttons that you'll be using for everything, and this is what we call simplified controls in the fighting game space, or some people call smash controls, where attacks are generally do not use motion inputs to activate. And for basic attacks, that is the case. All characters have a arsenal of basic attacks, which includes a neutral attack, a back attack, a forward attack, a down attack, and then a down and forward at the same time attack. This is usually something known as their sweep. When your opponent is swept or thrown, you gain something called meter, but we'll get back to that later. You also have jumping attacks, and you have a jumping attack that either involves you holding up or holding down. For Blaziken, it's up. Your special attacks are on neutral, forward, down, and a jumping special attack. As you see, that did change my jump arc. So as I said, in most cases you cannot do that, but Blaziken's jumping special allows him to. These are the kinds of exceptions you'll see popping up all the time. Fighting games are deep and complicated, and even for an easy one like this, you'll quickly get lost, but don't worry, we'll get there together. So, in terms of playing the game, generally what you want to do is hit your opponent and not get hit yourself. So if you want to not get hit yourself, what you can do is you can hold back or down back at the same time, and you'll block. In this game, because you also have access to a parry, you can parry your opponent instead of attacking them, instead of getting hit yourself. This is a defensive option that lets you beat both attacking high or low at the same time. Because as you can see, while I could block low here, let me make Wobbuffet do his jumping attack, and you'll see I can't block that low anymore. I have to block it high. So this is something you'll have to get a good muscle memory for in order to not get hit by your opponent. I've quickly switched over to versus mode, so you can see what happens when you attempt to block a move high, but your opponent uses a move that hits low. So you can see here I'm walking backwards, which is the same thing as blocking. Now Primeape will use a move that hits low, and my block will fail. Now we'll move on to another core fighting game feature, meter. In most games, meter is earned slowly as you attack your opponent. In this game, it's earned in bursts. So you earn meter in this game by hitting your opponent with a sweep and then connecting with the ground. This is important because some characters can interrupt our sweep in order to continue a combo. This means they won't get the meter. You can also get meter with throws in either direction, or you can hit your opponent with a parry attack to also gain meter. Alright, we have meter. What do we do with it? If you're paying attention earlier, you heard me use the term motion input. So what is a motion input? For standard attacks in this game, motion inputs aren't used, but for most fighting games, you do have to use a motion input to get your standard attacks, standard specials. The motion inputs in this game are only for hyper moves. So a motion input is doing a motion with your control stick. For example, if I do down and then back, or if I do it quickly, it looks like a quarter circle movement. And if I do a quarter circle backwards movement like that and then press the special button, I get a hyper move. The exact special inputs are generally the same across the cast in terms of the style. You have quarter circles, you have half circles, you have what's called a dragon punch, which is forward, down, down, forward. However, you can just do forward, down, forward if that seems a little tough for you. And you also occasionally see pressing the same button twice, which isn't really a motion input, but is a pretty common way for hypers to come out. These are generally the main ways you'll see hyper moves. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, every single character uses this template. Alright, so we have all these moves, but how do we bring them together into a coherent character? How do we actually play the game and get good? I know we need to hit our opponent and not get hit in the process. Well, don't do that, that's bad. But how do we actually bring that together to a coherent game plan? Well, you start by trying to identify what might be a good button to press when your opponent is in a situation where you're not too close. You can generally look at buttons like this one and be like, hey, that could hit my opponent pretty far. I could probably use that in a lot of situations. Or move like this one, where that hit my opponent for pretty far. Alright, so now you're seeing that you have options to play at a good range. But now, what if you're in a range where you're closer? Well, that button's pretty fast. I could press that a lot. If my opponent's really close, it's going to be hard for them to contest that. And you can start putting together a game plan of, I want to press these buttons when my opponent's close. I want to maybe do something like a throw when my opponent's close. And I want to focus on my strong and long range buttons when my opponent is a little farther. And you can start putting together a game plan. If you're more observant there, you might have noticed that I did two attacks in very quick succession. That is called a cancel, and it is a very fundamental part of how combos work in this game. So, for example, you saw that I canceled my forward attack into my neutral special. That's a decent combo. You can cancel forward attack into any special this character has, actually. That lets you start building a combo. You have to start looking for your opportunities to get cancels to deal more damage to your opponent every time you hit them. You could also look for something called links. Or something like... A link is when you hit your opponent and they're in hit stun for long enough that you could hit them again. No cancel needed. These are the kinds of things you need to look for when you start building up a combo. I'm going to set aside the combo game for a moment so that we can talk about something specific to Pokemon Close Combat. What I've been mostly talking about so far has been applicable to any fighting game, but if we want to improve our combo game, we're going to have to start learning some things about Close Combat itself. In this game, we have an additional resource called Endurance. You can see it in the bottom left corner above Blaziken's head. It's that pink bar, and if I press the parry button, I spend a little bit of it. And every single time I parry, I lose a bit. You generally only get this refreshed by being thrown or knocked down, and it's essentially a measure to keep the game going. You lose it when you use things something like a parry, or lose it when you block, meaning that the game has to be fast-paced, or else you'll spend too much time blocking and have your endurance bar worn down. And as you see, if I wear my endurance bar down to nothing and then try to block, I get guard broken. This gives Wobbuffet a meter and leaves me open for an attack. This is very bad. You generally do not want to get guard broken in any situation. Alright, but how does all that help us combo? Well, parrying isn't the only thing that button can do. You see, there's a lot of moves that can't be cancelled into specials. Like Blaziken's back attack here. You won't be able to cancel this into any special move. However, if we press the parry button, we get something called a C cancel. Suddenly now, you can cancel these moves, and if you look at the top left corner, you'll notice that it's cost me 1 meter. It's something that requires at least 2 meters stocked and will cost 1 meter to use. However, it allows you to extend your combos in ways special cancels wouldn't normally allow you to do. So, what moves does Blaziken have that are C cancelable? Well, that's a pretty good one. Usually forward special. You have no chance to combo after that. No way. But because you can C cancel it, that means you can. So what happens if we combine all that knowledge? We see that the forward special is C cancelable, we see that forward attack is cancelable into basically any special move, and we saw down back special was pretty strong. So what if we put that all together? We get a combo that does a pretty decent chunk of Wobbuffet's health. Alright, well that's mostly everything you're going to need to know to get started in Pokemon Close Combat, and even in many other fighting games in general. There are some small things I glossed over that I would like to cover real quick. In this game there are hypers that cost 2 or more meter. They're called supers. They tend to be a fair bit stronger for it, and are pretty good to use in a lot of situations. A lot of them are also invincible, which means you can't get hit at all when using them. Blaziken's is not for the most part, but a lot are. In addition, there's also another way to use parry attacks that I didn't cover earlier. You can either forward dash or back dash. And so if I wear my endurance bar down a bit, you can see I regain it if I parry and then back dash. That covers basically everything now. This should be good for getting anyone started, and I'll be uploading some more videos to go more in depth about some things later. Thank you for playing. See you later.